All right, in politics, oh, honey, you didn't have to do that. I mean, really, you didn't have to do that. Mrs. Clinton facing a myriad of criticism, but the former Secretary of State says she does not need her husband standing up for her. She reportedly just told PBS NewsHour, "My husband was very sweet today, but I don't need anybody to defend my record. I think my record speaks for itself." She's referring to the former president's fierce defense of her assertion that the family was dead broke when they left the White House. The former president spoke yesterday with NBC's David Gregory.
It is factually true that we were several $1 million in debt. She's not out of touch, and she advocated and worked as a senator for things that were good for ordinary people.
Yeah, good ordinary people. But here's what Mrs. Clinton now says about that dead broke comment in her own defense.
I shouldn't have said the, I think, 5 or so words that I said, but, you know, my inartful use of those few words doesn't change who I am, what I've stood for my entire life, what I stand for today.
So is Bill doing Hillary any favors, and will the dead broke comment ever go away? I want to bring in CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist Donna Brazile and Ari Fleischer, former White House press secretary for George W. Bush. Donna, you know, Mrs. Clinton said what she said about being dead broke, then she cleaned it up, then Bill Clinton cleaned up the cleanup, and now Hillary is cleaning up the cleanup of the cleanup. Without relitigating the meaning of what she initially said, are they handling this the right way?
Well, of course, when sound bites get more play than substance, you have to keep trying to clean it up. But you know what? Hillary Clinton's record in public office and, of course, her tremendous record as an advocate for middle-class families, for children, for the working poor, that supersedes all of this. But you know what? We're in a so-called pre-election season in terms of 2016. So whatever she says, it's going to get a lot of ink. And you know what? Maybe it'll sell a couple more books.
I'm not so sure it's even pre anymore, but we'll leave that aside for a second. All right, Donna talked about Mrs. Clinton's record. Let's talk about her foreign policy record, because she also weighed in on the president's decision not to leave residual forces in Iraq. Look at what she said here. She said he was deciding based on what the Bush administration had already determined, because they were the ones who said troops have to be out by the end of 2011. Now, that is a decision she was reportedly against as Secretary of State. She reportedly suggested leaving troops there. Again, without relitigating who did what whom and when was the bad decision first made, or who made the worst decision, was it Bush or Obama? Let's talk about foreign policy, the president's foreign policy. Will this be a problem for her if she runs for president?
Well, sure. Anybody who runs for president is going to get challenged both on a domestic and international agenda. And when you look abroad and you see how bad the world has gone to in Ukraine, with Syria, with Iraq, none of it feels right, none of it feels like anything is working. All that accrues to the detriment of the former Secretary of State who might want to become president. So sure, it's going to be an issue. If things were peaceful around the world, it would benefit her. Things are not going well, it's going to be a problem for her.
Even if she tries to create space on issues of Iraq and Syria, which she's done in her book.
Well, sure, and she will create space, and she did have different positions, but it still is what you are held to. And as a Secretary of State, she'll be particularly held to it. And, for example, the Russian reset. That was hers, and things haven't gone so well with Russia.
Well, you know what, John? Nobody's going to look in the rearview mirror but Republicans, and that's why they constantly lose elections. Hillary Clinton, if she decides to run, and that's the big if, she's going to talk about the future relationships with these countries, not just look at what happened, you know, 4 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, even under President Obama's term. But her job and her role, if she decides to run, is to talk about the future. No one votes for anyone based on just, you know, talking about the past. They want to hear, what are you going to do for us next time?
I want to look in the rearview mirror just for a second, Donna, if you will allow me. I'm looking in the rearview mirror to last night when Thad Cochran won an election in Mississippi, a runoff there against Chris McDaniel. Rush Limbaugh, who you may have heard of, had some, you know, pretty provocative explanations for why Thad Cochran won last night. I think we have the sound. Let's listen to that.
I wonder what the campaign slogan was in Mississippi the past couple days. Uncle Tom's for Thad?
So obviously, Rush Limbaugh talking about the fact that African Americans did appear to turn out and vote for Thad Cochran. What do you make of that comment?
Well, first of all, he's an entertainer, so I laugh, okay? So that's number one. Number two, I have to tell you, you know, in the past, because I have family in Mississippi, my maternal grandmother was from Mississippi. I was there last week. Let me just say this. There are a number of African Americans, independents and others, who support Thad Cochran because He's been a good senator. He's been good on constituent services. He's delivered. And I can tell you this, and Rush Limbaugh needs to understand this. Right after Hurricane Katrina, who was down there trying to help people pick up their lives? Who was there to help them get back into their homes? Who was there to help them rebuild their lives? It was Thad Cochran. It was no Rush Limbaugh.
Interesting. You know, it's a point that Dana Bash made, and she's been down there in the state for the last few days covering this. Ari, I want to give you the last word on an interesting subject right now. House Speaker John Boehner says they're going to sue the president over the issue of executive orders. Now, President Obama is not the first guy to use executive orders here. In fact, so far he's used less than your boss, President George W. Bush. You think this is a good idea?
Partially, yes. Look, I'm a big fan of a vigorous president and a strong president. He uses all the powers of his office to get done whatever it is he can get done within the law. And that includes the use of executive orders. But you can also go too far. The one that bothers me the most is Obamacare, where the president has now just unilaterally waived the law, not implemented the law, applied it selectively, or just said it doesn't count anymore. We're going to push back extensions or deadlines. That, to me, is a very troubling issue, because the way that the law of the land is the law of the land, and the president does have to obey it.
He's not breaking any law.
Hold on now. The other one that he did is say that the Senate is not in session, and therefore make recess appointments. You know, these are congressional prerogatives, and the president does not have the power to trump Congress on those issues. So frankly, a suit is good because it actually draws new definitions for all future presidents to know what the law is.
You know, there's a reason why Nancy Pelosi didn't waste taxpayer money to rev up the Democratic base while George Bush was president, and we're talking about torture, because presidents have power. They have executive power,
Donna,
and they use it judiciously and cautiously. And this president has used it very cautiously. In fact, you have to go all the way back to Grover Cleveland, 1885 to 1889, to see a president who's not used the pen.
Cautiously,
but, you know,
he's turned Obamacare into Swiss cheese.
They want to sue the president for doing his job, while the Republicans in Congress are not failing to do their job. I think they need to get sued.
Donna Brazil's playing the Grover Cleveland card, Ari, so we have to leave it there. Okay. Donna Brazil, Ari Fleischer, thank you both so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.